Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2009 stop-motion animated film, Coraline. Now, Coraline is a film that I've heard a lot of good things about over the years, but I just haven't really got around to watching it until recently, and I loved it. I thought this was an admirable and genuinely amazing work of animation and art in general, and I thought it was a very mesmerizing and compelling film in a multitude of different ways. I can see why this film has such a large fan following and why it's really connected with a lot of people. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, though, I would like to give a special shout out to Movie Guy for requesting this review. Coraline is directed by Henry Selick, and Henry Selick is the same director of The Nightmare Before Christmas, as well as a slew of other stop motion animated films. And honestly, from what I've seen from his filmography, this might be his best work to date. He did a absolutely spectacular job directing this film. This was a film that not only had a lot of an ambition when it comes to the camera work, but there was just so much imagination and creativity, and it was just a really wondrous film to watch. Just to see how Selick framed his shots in order to really make the animation and the stop motion pop. And not only that, the way that he utilized camera angles and pans and zooms and wide shots and a tracking shot or a POV shot or just all these different types of camera techniques to really immerse the audience into his imagination in a way that was just incredible. It was an awe-inspiring, astounding achievement by Selick. And it was just a sign of things to come for him because he would go on to continue to further hone his craft after this film. But I think that this was his peak, and I think this was his pinnacle. And his direction is ultra dynamic, very unique, very interesting, and he was able to not only capture his vision for the film in terms of the whole mood and the atmosphere well, but he was also able to capture the emotion. And this is a film that has a lot of that. There's a lot of scenes that are really trying to showcase and display particular emotions. And the screenplay does its job, and so does the voice actors and the music. But the direction is just really the main thing to me that just makes it feel all the more real when it comes to the emotion of those scenes. And it's also a film that has a fair amount of tension at points. And a big part of it is due to how Selick directs those sequences. And also, it's a film that has, a nice little cheeky sense of humor, some levity, but also some genuine intrigue and even some creepy atmosphere. Like there's some elements in this that honestly are kind of reminiscent of something you would see in a horror film. Uh, Especially when it comes to a lot of the scenes involving the other mother later on in the film. So yeah, I just loved the way that Selick directed this film. It was just such a wonderful uh, work of direction and just an overall achievement by Selick because it was just something that was just very special. And you could just tell that he had a genuine love for the world of Coraline. And you just felt it in every scene. And it's a big part of why I love the film so much, is really because of how Selick brought the world to life. Now, the film is also written by Selick, and if you ask me, I think he did just as solid and just as strong of a job writing this film as he did directing it. It's based on a novella by Neil Gaiman, and Neil apparently handpicked Henry himself to helm the adaptation of his novella. And say whatever you want about Neil Gaiman. Uh, and honestly, I agree with what everybody has to say about him. He's a creep. But he was on the money here. He was definitely spot on when it comes to realizing that Selick was the right guy for the job. Not only to direct the film, but also to write the screenplay. I read initially, apparently it was going to be a live action film originally, but then Selick and Gaiman and some other people involved with the production decided to go a different direction. And I definitely think that that was the right choice. I don't think the film would be as unique, and I don't think the film would be as special, to be honest, if it was live action versus stop motion in its entirety. But the screenplay, it's a story that is not necessarily the most complex, but it still has enough depth and enough strong characterization and enough twists and turns and enough intrigue to still make it a very effective screenplay. It centers on this young girl named Coraline and her family, who have moved from Michigan into a Victorian house called the Pink Palace in Ashland, Oregon. And Coraline is very precocious. She's very imaginative. She's the type of kid who has a very big imagination and is very creative, especially when it comes to working in her garden. And she wants to also be active most of the time. She doesn't really want to just sit there and twiddle her thumbs. She wants to be out and about and doing things and going on adventures. And her parents aren't really into the same things. They don't really connect with her in the same way. In fact, her parents, Charlie and Mel, they are very distant from Coraline at the start of the story because they're too focused on their work. And I think for a lot of people, that's something that they can definitely relate to. Growing up with parents who are very busy and don't really have as much time for their kids. And Coraline, because she's bored, she goes outside and she is looking for an old well. She finds a cat, a black cat, and the landlady's grandson, Wybie, who shows up on a motorcycle and scares her. Um, but I guess he felt a little bad when it comes to how he initially introduced himself to her. So eventually gives her a gift, which is a rag doll that looks very similar to her. And after that, Coraline is still, deciding to spend her time exploring. She explores the house, and then she discovers a small door with a brick wall behind it in the living room. And the small door aspect is one of many things that Selick himself added to the screenplay that wasn't in Gaiman's original novella. In fact, in Gaiman's original novella, apparently the door was bigger. It was a regular sized door, but Selick didn't like that visually and decided to go with the small door. And I think that was definitely the right choice. It was a more uh, um, fascinating and a more unique and interesting a choice for the door into this other world. To have something be small and then winds up leading into something very big, I definitely think that that is a lot more interesting visually. And later that night, Coraline actually finds a way to open the door. She follows some mice to the door, and the brick wall is now gone. And it's this tunnel, this purple tunnel, which leads her to another world where she finds a button eyed doppelgangers of her parents, who are the complete opposite of her parents in every way. They give her these nice, delicious meals every night. They cater to her every whim and everything that she could ever ask for. And the father's really into gardening and has this beautiful garden. And the mom is paying more attention to her and cares about her. So you think. And I think the script did a really great job in terms of making things seem like there's something sinister on the horizon, but not necessarily making it that obvious from the start. Things seem off, but not in a way where it seems like it's necessarily too much of a threat. But definitely very off. I mean, they have buttons for eyes, but they don't the other parents don't necessarily seem like they're that harmful. So you can understand why a young girl or just, any kid who was in the same situation would wind up trusting them and would actually prefer them over their actual parents. And I know that some people have had some issues with the way that Coraline is presented throughout the story, how she comes across as a little too much in terms of her attitude and maybe some moments where she's being rude to some of the people around her. But to me, it's just it's to set up the arc for her character, and she definitely learns to be better and to not do that as much as the story goes on. So it doesn't bother me. I know it does for some people, but it doesn't bother me at all, to be perfectly honest. And I think in large part is because I mean, I can connect with that. I was a bratty kid. I got to be honest. I was a bratty kid at points with my parents. 100%. Like absolutely. So I could definitely connect with that. And just like Coraline does throughout this story, I eventually learned that I was in the wrong and that my parents actually meant well, and I was just approaching things the wrong way, and I was being rude and so on and so forth. But in order to set up that arc, she's got to be bratty. But I think it was bratty in a way where she wasn't entirely unlikable. So that when she winds up going into the other world and she has all these experiences that are fantastical and just have all these amazing, wonderful, but definitely still kind of off kilter and oddball imagery. it has this very dreamlike quality to it. It's very surreal, but it still definitely has a feeling of this is harmless. Like this is, it's not gonna lead to anything that could potentially harm this girl. And almost to the point where you might think that it's just a dream. Like these are just dreams that she's having. It's not even actually a real thing. It's not even a real threat if there is any. But as the story progresses, as you see more and more different versions of these different people that are around her and are a part of this other world, stuff starts to really get very eerie. And things really turn sour when Coraline is asked by the other mother to sew buttons on her eyes. And that's the only way that she can stay there. And Coraline, being a smart girl, quickly realizes that, okay, this is wrong. I need to get out of here. And she eventually gets away, but the other mother winds up taking her parents. And so now Coraline has to find a way to save her parents from the other mother. And she gets some help from the other YB, as well as the YB in the real world. And YB, by the way, is another addition that Selick made to the story. YB didn't even exist in the original story by Gaiman, and I think YB's a very integral addition to the story, to be perfectly honest. Uh, I know that there's a whole thing with the other YB and how he doesn't talk, and how Coraline prefers that version. She's a kid, and uh, that happens quite often with kids where, oh, I like so and so, but not when they're making so much noise or they're annoying me. And it could be annoying somebody for the most asinine stupid reasons that don't even make any sense, but it's a kid. Kids do that kind of stuff, and I didn't think it was that crazy or wild of a thing for her to do and for her to think about. And eventually she realizes that's not right, and even like opens his mouth and allows him, to talk, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of lessons that Coraline learns throughout her creepy, spooky little adventure in the other world. And a lot of them are having to do with how she approaches uh, her life and those around her, and also a journey of self discovery, and also a way for her to have more faith in herself. As cliched as that is, that definitely is an element of this story, and it's a well handled one, because she eventually decides to uh, go out and risk everything and go back into the tunnel and go back into the other world and find her parents. And she also gets some help from a black cat, the same black cat that was hanging around with YB earlier in the movie. And I like the idea that the black cat can actually move in between worlds. And when the black cat is in the other world, it can actually talk to Coraline. And the black cat helps her on this mission, but a lot of it she figures out on her own. She does get some help as well from these burlesque uh, actors who have been retired for many, many years, who are like next door neighbors. And one of them even gives her this like, I'm trying to think of what it is. It's like a piece of it's not a piece of marble, but it's like a seeing eye that can enable her to like see things in the other world that she wouldn't be able to otherwise. And she gears up, gets all the things that she can grab to help her on this mission, goes back into the other world, and that's when you realize that everything is just completely warped now. Like the color scheme has changed. It's like this spooky green and like black now, and everything is just like a nightmarish, demented version of all the other dream, sequences, that she experienced earlier. Everything's now monstrous. Everything's now creepy and weird and off. And she decides to challenge the other mother uh, to a game. And because she found out that the other mother really likes games. And she decides to challenge the other mother to a game involving finding the spirits of these other lost kids that were taken by the other mother and essentially left for dead, really. Uh, and her parents. As this other mother, of course, loves a challenge, she hides the spirits in different parts of the world and the other world, and also continues to hide the parents. And so Coraline has to find a way to essentially win a scavenger hunt with a limited amount of time. And what I really liked about this whole sequence is the creativity and the ingenuity behind the different clues and the different ways that she winds up finding these lost spirits, and even the way that she finds her parents as well, and just all the different obstacles as well that are in her way throughout the entire process, to the point where after each soul that she saves, the world breaks apart more and more. And it even gets to the point where she winds up in a part of the world where there's nothing but just white blank space. And I thought that that was really different and honestly pretty cool. A really interesting visual for sure. Almost as if this was just some kind of computer simulation. But that, I think that's really the intent, is that it's a simulation that the other mother, who is this interdimensional creature, this arachnid like spider lady, has created, and this is really just an extension of her web. And eventually, Coraline does outsmart the other mother, and she does wind up saving her parents. And she even throws the key to the door into the well, and along with some help from YB, before the other mother is able to get it back. Because even after she gets her parents back, it's not over. And I like that. I like that approach a lot when it comes to the script, because I was worried that it was just going to end with some kind of, oh, well, it was all a dream and it didn't actually happen. And it didn't go there. It almost did, because when the parents came back and it looked like, the snow globe broke and all these things seemed to piece together that it was just all a dream or a nightmare and none of this ever happened. It was just one of those things where, oh God, really? We're going to go there? But it didn't, thankfully. And it actually ends with a pretty suspenseful, intense sequence for the finale. And has a nice bookend, though. A nice heartfelt bookend with Coraline and her parents. When they return from their trip to the publisher, and they publish their journal, and they have decided to, acknowledge Coraline more, and the mom even got Coraline the gloves that she wanted as a gift. And now, would I have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more with the parents in terms of them, apologizing to Coraline, or, spending more time with her? Yeah, but I think that still is something that ultimately works out with the gardening scene at the end. So I don't really think that it really was something that needed that much more. Maybe just like a little bit of dialogue between the parents and Coraline, instead of just looking over her lovingly, when she's sleeping in bed. Like, okay, I get it, but like maybe a little bit more to make that arc that the parents went through have more of an impact and stick with the audience more. But that's really only one of the few things that I would personally have liked to have seen with this script, because the majority of it, I think, is just very well handled and very well written by Selick. Uh, it's got the right amount of emotion throughout it. I think it's a pretty compelling plot, at least to me personally. There's a good structure for all of the fantastical and imaginative and incredible imagery throughout the film, and I think it's a really good coming of age story. I genuinely feel that way. I think it does capture a lot of the same vibes that a lot of the other uh, more popular or just as popular and well known coming of age films do, but with this very wondrous and just awe-inspiring world that Selick brings to life throughout the entirety of the runtime. And it did a good job balancing the tone as well. That's something I think could have been difficult, but Selick nailed it. Knew when it needed to be a little creepy, knew when it needed to be serious, but also knew when it needed to be more uh, tongue in cheek or have a little bit more levity to provide it more balance and not make things feel like they're too tired or too one note. So yeah, I think Selick really did a great job with the screenplay and making something that's sinister at points, but silly, uh, but still heartfelt, and still something that feels like it's not just a bunch of nonsensical sequences and fantasy elements that are just slapped together. There's a lot of care put into it. The voice cast I thought was also terrific. Dakota Fanning was fantastic as Coraline. Did a really great job bringing her to life and just providing her with her personality and her different quirks and her different charm. And it's easily one of her best performances, if you ask me. Teri Hatcher, she was also, in my opinion, really good as the mother and the other mother. It's honestly one of Hatcher's best performances too. She did such a good job doing the dual role, to the point where you almost don't even think that it was Teri Hatcher doing both, but it was, because she was just so capable here when it comes to playing both roles, both sides of Coraline's mother. And you also have French and Saunders, the duo, the British comedian duo, as April and Miriam, and the Otherworld counterparts. And I love those two ladies. So it was a lot of fun to see them team up again and play these roles. And they definitely provided a fair amount of laughs for me personally. And I think it's in large part because I just love those two. I think Jennifer Saunders and Dawn French are just incredible. And Keith David, he was really special. Did a really strong job voicing the cat. Just showcased his range as an actor, and it was just a really fun role to hear him tackle and approach, and he just nailed it. Like because Keith David, this isn't his first time doing animation. Like he's definitely experienced in that regard. John Hodgman, I also thought did some solid work as Coraline's father, Charlie, and the other father. Ian McShane as Bobinski also did some uh, good work as well. And yeah, that's pretty much the main cast. And I felt they all had some good chemistry and they all worked together well. And everybody who had a speaking role in this film really did deliver at the end of the day. The cinematography by Pete Kosachik was really something else. I thought it was just a really great looking movie, and I felt his vision matched up perfectly with what Selick was wanting from the film. And then I think it was well edited as well by Christopher Murray and Ronald Sanders, and the music by Bruno Coles. I thought was really strong. I thought it was a very solid score, and it had a lot of unique notes to it, and a mix of a choral aspect, with a choir, singing some lyrics that kind of sound like English, but I'm not even entirely sure if they were. But it just added to the whole ethereal and eerie nature of the movie and the surrealness of it. And I think the score definitely did emphasize a lot of the film's stronger emotions as well. Um, and it's kind of a musical at points, but also kind of not. Like there's some songs, but it's not what I would consider to be a traditional musical. But the songs that were there were also well done. And overall, I really liked it. I thought it was a very unique and interesting and wonderful trip through the imagination and just creative genius of Henry Selick. So, yeah, that is my thoughts on Coraline. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.